Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this record here. It's by the Bluebells. It's their debut album and until this year, like their only album, Sisters, released on the 10th of July in 1984. So I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. Okay, so the band was formed by a leader like Roger Hodgins, or like otherwise known as Bobby Bluebell. Like he started the band as he used to edit a music fanzine like around Glasgow, and he'd said that he'd essentially ran out of new bands to write about, so he decided to form his own, and he would kind of and their kind of image and kind of style was kind of moulded on like the Byrds jangly pop style, and that kind of quite photogenic kind of that sort of aesthetic to them. In Glasgow, the kind of circle of friends they were kind of associated with included the likes of Orange Juice, Edwyn Collins, and Claire Grogan from Altered Images, were all part of the same kind of scene in the early 80s. So Hodgins enlisted the help of two brothers, Ken and David McCluskey, who were local punk musicians, and he had interviewed them as part of his fanzine, and he recruited them to be to become the vocalist and drummer respectively. And like I said, Roger played guitar and wrote the lion's share of the songs, as well as doing some vocals here and there on the album too. In the Bluebells' rather short tenure together, the lineup almost resembles a who's who of Scottish indie pop, with both Lawrence Donegan, who would later go on to join Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, again the band at one point as the bass player, and he also had Craig Gannon, who would later join Aztec Camera and even the Smiths as well, all members of the band at different points. So kind of possibly because of these connections to popular acts of the time, the band managed to find their way onto national television, they were one of the only unsigned acts to ever appear on the Old Grey and Whistle Test and the cover of the Melody Maker magazine. So then there was quite a lot of competition among record labels to get a hold of this band. Eventually a label called London Records won out and signed the band, and they'd also worked were working around this time with Elvis Costello as producer on some early singles, and these kind of early singles got gradually more successful through this media exposure, with the singles from this I'm Falling just missed out on the top 10, and Young at Heart was a top 10. So that kind of this kind of gradual build up of successful singles meant that the record company then commissioned a full album for them, which would consist of a mix of these early singles as well as newer material on the second side. So commercially, this album did pretty well. It reached number 22 on the UK charts, which is pretty good for a debut, and would be well acclaimed, with Rolling Stone magazine calling it highly accomplished and truly smart pop. Unfortunately though, for the Bluebells, success wouldn't last all that long. They would unfortunately split up 2 years after the release of the album, and it's a bit of a mystery. Again, I was trying to find information really as to why they broke up. I mean, apparently it was all quite amicable, to be honest. The brothers Ken and David McCluskey continued as a kind of more sort of folky duo. Bobby Bluebell went on to become a successful songwriter for the likes of Texas and Sinead O'Connor, and even I think Brian Wilson, it said on Wikipedia as well, he collaborated with. So yeah, reasons for the split up aren't particularly clear, especially considering that they had success. To be honest with you, they were a successful band, but I think that possibly could have contributed to why they broke up. I think the band slightly resented the fact that they were being promoted, I guess, as a kind of boy band a little bit, or certainly as a bit more a kind of kind of poster sort of boy kind of band sort of thing. So they didn't have, I guess in some ways they lacked the same kind of credibility of some of their contemporaries Lloyd Cole and the Smiths had. So maybe that was a kind of factor. They felt that they were maybe being pressured, I guess, into making like just sort of like that to kind of keep on like churning out like hits. But anyway, I will try to show you my vinyl copy of here. This is my uncle's old copy, so this is a original pressing here from 1984 here. Great cover, really, really love the cover there. And you've got a really good inner sleeve here as well. It just has the lyrics and a picture of the band there. And then you've got just track information and again, more photos there. So really, really nice packaging on this. And then the record label looks like that. So a nice custom label there. Sorry about like the glare there, but I think yeah, you're getting the message with that. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album songs in detail. I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So it kicks off with Everybody's Somebody's Fool, and this is a really good opener, very energetic track to kick off the album. You've got kind of blaring like harmonica and this kind of great kind of like guitar riff, like kind of like sort of like cementing like the song. Apparently, like with like this track, again it went through a few like iterations in terms of mixes and stuff. Apparently, the band aren't too fond of this album version. They think it's a bit too slick and like that, and that kind of came about because they were just so busy. Like they were kind of like touring a lot of the time, so essentially the album was mixed and sequenced like by like the record label. So yeah, apparently like, they're not too happy like with like this more like polished version, but I do rather like it. I mean, like it's certainly not super polished or anything. There's still a kind of lot of energy like in there like with like this song. So yeah, for me, Everybody's Somebody's Fool would get a 9 out of 10. Young at heart, yet what a start. Okay, next track up is a Young at Heart, which is well, definitely the most well-known track, and I recently picked up the single, so I will just quickly show that here. So yeah, here's the single for like Young at Heart. Yeah, this is, I would imagine most people who are familiar with 80s music, or even just music in general, are probably at least know this song, I think. You know, it's a very iconic track. You've got this kind of very catchy kind of fiddle part on there, and again, a really strong, very catchy chorus on there. I mean, the song itself has got a really interesting backstory. It was originally released by like Bananarama, like in that 1983. So like it was written between like the three members like of Bananarama and Bobby Bluebell, who was I think dating like one of them. Like so like kind of like Bananarama like released like their song. I don't think it was a single for theirs like or anything, but it was just on like one of like their albums. But then the Bluebells were kind of messing about with it, and the kind of they thought, well, this is a really good song, we should do like our own version, and their own version went through again quite a few different like iterations. There's a really interesting clip like on YouTube of them doing a more kind of like Northern Soul kind of version. Sounds very style council-y, and it's almost completely different like from like the single version, which is a lot more kind of country style. Like I said, you've got like this kind of fiddle on there, and it's kind of a very different like kind of like feel to it. Almost and I guess this is the kind of track which I guess I don't say destroyed like their credibility, but it certainly didn't help them, you know, because it is a very catchy song. It's a very universal song, like which I think like kind of like transcends like them like as like a band like to like be honest. So yeah, like on its original release 1984, it reached number 8, but then it was used some 10 years later in a Volkswagen commercial 1993, and I mean, it just kind of shows you like the power, like what like kind of like promotion and kind of sort of like advertising campaigns could have. The song reached number 1 for like 4 weeks, so the band kind of were forced to like reform and kind of appear like on like Top of the Pops like for like various like appearances. So I guess that's kind of like they had become, I guess, a bit of a one-hit wonder really, just because of huge success like off like this track. It kind of transcended like almost everything else like they've done, like to like be honest with you. But no, it's a really good song. Again, it's a bit annoying, a bit cheesy, but I mean I do like it, and I think it's a kind of there's a good kind of this is all falling apart. Like there's a good kind of contrast between the kind of like the catchy chorus, but then like the verses which are a bit more kind of downbeat and that. So I do rather like it. But yeah, this is the single here, and this is quite a special version of it as well. So it's kind of you've got the actual single here, which looks like that, which is really nice. But this is a kind of poster edition, so you can see what I'm saying about them kind of promoting the band like as a kind of boy band kind of thing, because you can see here they are where is it here? Yeah, they are quite a photogenic band, and sort of like they look good sort of thing. Like so they definitely were being marketed like sort of like for kind of teenagers basically, which I think they were a bit uncomfortable with and maybe weren't they kind of felt that they didn't really fit in with that a little bit, I suppose. Okay, so next track up, which was also a single, which is also one I've actually got a copy of it, it's I'm Falling here. So this is a brilliant, brilliant track. It's quite, I guess it's a bit uncharacteristic like for like a single, like I suppose, because it's quite long. It's about 5.5 minutes this, but it just takes you on such a journey, this track. You know, it's kind of like the kind of core of the song is just a really solid track, very catchy, like that chorus, like I'm falling on down again part. It's just great, but then then the second half of the song, it kind of then goes in a completely different direction, and they've said that it was kind of two songs kind of bolted together, but it really feels very seamlessly done. Like, you know, with some artists they kind of bolt two songs together. I'm thinking of like Paul McCartney and that. It can sound a bit forced, you know, or like it's noticeable that these are two separate songs which have been brought together. But this one is almost seamless. It just feels like it's just building up and like works like really well, like very cleverly done there. And yeah, never gets boring, even though it is like quite like a long song there. So this was another UK single here, and it got to number 11 like on like the charts. So I think this was released before Young at Heart, I think. So this was their first sort of big success, like as a single, and yeah, it is a brilliant, brilliant song. So yeah, I'm Falling for me would get a 10 out of 10. Okay, next track up now on the album is Will She Always Be Waiting. Now this one, again, is a song which went through a few different like iterations, was originally called Wishful Thinking, and had a more kind of faster like arrangement to it, but then it was kind of slowed down like in like the studio. And this was one of like the only tracks, or this is the only track on the album which is actually produced by Elvis Costello, and I mean this song is brilliant, you know, it's got this beautiful string arrangement on there. It's just really lush sounding, great acoustic guitars on there. It kind of almost makes me think that Elvis Costello should have produced the whole album, and I'm not too sure why he didn't, like, to be honest. I guess he was quite a busy man at this point, you know, like I think he was working with a few different artists and also like his own solo stuff, so I think he was maybe only brought on to do a couple like off sessions for them. But no, this is absolutely brilliant. It's very, yeah, grand sort of song, very Walker Brothers-esque like kind of thing, like this one here. And they kind of said that, yeah, working with Costello was a real privilege for them. I mean, all being like big fans of his, but they said that he kind of took a real interest again, like the band, that he would kind of like sort of try and like understand what their influences were and kind of really create a bond with them, like in like the studio. So no, this is a real favourite of mine. It's just such a beautiful song, and it really stands out like on like the album, very different from a lot of the other material like on here. Okay, next track up, which closes off side one, is Kath. Now, this is a really good underrated pop gem for me. This was a single, I think, released way before the album, but it was a little bit more, like that single version was a bit more stripped back, and it kind of had it built up gradually a little bit more, whereas this one is kind of all full on, like from like the get-go and that. But all round, it's a really catchy song, this, and again, I'm surprised this song wasn't a bigger hit. When me and Richard McCook did a video together around underperforming singles, this is one he chose, and I can absolutely see why, because you just listen to it and you think, yeah, this should be a hit, you know, it should be like really commercial, because it is a very catchy song, but unfortunately it wasn't. But no, still great though, so it would get a 9 out of 10 for me. Okay, next track up is called Red Guitars. Now this one, yeah, it kind of kicks off the second side, which is almost, it's kind of like a concept side. This is very political, the second side. So there's we've had all the singles, we've had all the catchy commercial songs. This side is where the album starts to get a bit more serious, and they kind of start to, I guess, want to have a bit more credibility, like to like the name. And I think it's, and I think that there's some, again, really great songs like contained like on like the second side here. So yeah, Red Guitars is like the first one of these, and this is a more kind of, yeah, rocky, more kind of punky, kind of Clash sounding song, like in like spirit, like at least. This song is also sung by the second guitarist in the band, a guy called like Russell Irvin, who like, yeah, like they kind of like, that's the thing like with the Bluebells. Again, because I'm still quite new to them, I don't quite know who sings each song, but this is what I know, that like this guy Russell Irvin, who's kind of like the second guitarist for the time, sings. And again, it's a more political song. That's basically about wanting to kind of like sort of like wake the world up, like wake the world up, like with like red guitars, kind of using it like as like a metaphor, like for socialism. And there's some really great lyrics on this one here. I mean, like lines like "sit at home and wave your Union Jack. The world has stopped and everybody's just sitting back." And yeah, it's delivered with a lot of kind of passion for me there. So yeah, red guitars would get an 8 out of 10 overall. Really, really good song. Next up is called Syracuse University. Now this one is again another upbeat track here. You got again a nice guitar textures like on this one here, and this one was like written by like Bobby Bluebell while they were like on tour like in like America. They were passing like the Syracuse University like in like New York, and it was apparently the university that like Lou Reed like went to. But when like kind of like so like Bobby Bluebell like was like kind of researching like the institution, he found that it kind of had a kind of more like of like a military past sort of thing, so that kind of changed like the meaning like of like the lyrics to this one here. So there's some very political lines like "to make money means to make a killing" and sort of things like that. But I think it's really good, and again very well produced this one here. Some great vocal harmonies on there for me too. So yeah, Syracuse University would get an 8 out of 10. Next up is Learn to Love. Now this one is a really fun kind of Northern Soul style track. This one here, I mean, it's quite full on, I suppose. I mean, you've got like the horns are quite loud like on like this track here, and like particularly like the verses. But I think what kind of bumps the song up a little bit for me is the kind of contrast between those kind of full on verses and then the kind of chorus, which again I think they've said was it was like 2 separate songs kind of like put together like this track here. A notable appearance on this one, a guest appearance, is a certain like Eddie Vedder, who were going to form Fairground Attraction, like a big hits out with songs like Perfect and like whatnot. So this is like one of her first appearances here, and yeah, a really like again a good performance she puts in. But I guess it's slightly out of place, slightly overshadows like the song, like I think like in like some ways. And again lyrically, this one kind of continues the kind of political strides like off like the second side. So this one is about like the Falklands War and kind of like the troops like not coming home basically. So he sings like, "I saw your mother with tears in her eyes. I saw your father cry. For a son lost in a foreign field, they found no reason why." So again, some great lyrics, which again I think you can kind of blink and miss them sort of thing, just because it's teens out with such like an upbeat like kind of like track. But no, really good song there. So yeah, Learn to Love will get an 8 out of 10. The patriot game. Next up is another change in tone a little bit. See, it's one of the only kind of like acoustic songs like on like the album, like the Patriots game. Now this one is actually a cover as well. It's a cover like off like a side kind of traditional like Irish like folk ballad like from like the late 50s, I think, written like about kind of like the Troubles and that. So it's kind of, I guess it's a bit at odds like with the rest of the album in terms of being a cover, in terms of like the style like it's done in, but it certainly fits well into the kind of themes that they're exploring like on like the second side. And I think kind of shows that they could be a serious band, and like I think like were worthy of like attention like and like credibility. So yeah, Patriots game would get an 8 out of 10. Next up is a South Atlantic Way, which is a brilliant closer, this one here. Again, it's another song about like the Falklands War and how the kind of media and newspapers were kind of sort of spread like sort of like propaganda like in like support like of it. So he sings like and yet another country's youth to die, and yet another vote's been won, another masked official lies, another dead son. And then but it's like kind of the difference between the kind of verse and then you've got this awesome guitar break. It just sounds brilliant, and I think it really works like as a closer because you've got that guitar, you've got some kind of slightly more tribal drums like on here as well, so they are kind of expanding their sound like kind of like all like the second side. And I think on this track in particular, they really are it really does convey that sense of anger like at like kind of like the Falklands, like so a great song there for me, and we'll get a 10 out of 10 for South Atlantic Way. Okay, so overall, this album would score 89%, so I think this is a brilliant record. There's a good mix on here, I think, between kind of light and shade, so like the kind of poppy singles, Young at Heart, and like Kath and I'm Falling, but then the kind of like second side, which is a bit darker, it's a bit more serious like in tone, like, but again musically is still top notch, and like kind of like sort of like, and they were probably more political like than like a lot of like their like contemporaries, like kind of thing, like musically I guess like compared to like Aztec Camera, but like they'd never, like Aztec Camera like would never release like kind of songs like on like the second side here, so a lot more kind of, yeah, like sort of them like that similar kind of feel like to like Style Council and like a lot of like the Red Wedge acts like off like the time. But no, a record which I think is like, yeah, definitely one like worth checking out, like for any fan like off like kind of like mid-80s kind of like indie pop. It's a, yeah, certified classic here. So I hope you have enjoyed this review of the Bluebells Sisters album. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.